We're into the final four teams with a very, very similar draw, and that is the Raiders, the Dolphins, the Sharkies, and the Bunnies for our NRL Supercoach preseason. With those four teams there, they do have their first bye pretty late, so they play a lot in the early bye period as well. So they are four teams where I think you can bring in a host of players early on, get them to play all the way through to that time, and as I said, they play a lot in that early bye period as well. So these are squads that have that bye at the start of the bye period or very late in the piece, and then they have one at the end of the bye period, and then one in the back end of the season. So yeah, great teams for you to start with, and you can obviously tell there are a host of top tier guns over a couple of these teams, especially potentially not the Raiders, but definitely with the Sharkies, the Bunnies, and the Dolphins as well. So let's go through those four teams and kick it off in the hooking position. So we do have a couple of guys that I think that will be on people's radars, and that is basically all of the top five here. And then in Pete Mamazelis a little bit later on down the track. But with Max Plath, he comes in with the dual position, 2RF and the hooker. Hit a 63 average last year, and if you're buying him, you're buying him for the consistency along with the dual, and we can very much say the exact same thing about McInnes. If you're buying these guys, you're hoping to not trade them at all until potentially the buy period when you may want a little bit more upside through that period, and when they do have a couple of buys in the tank, and then one later on as well, which can annoy us when we have less trades. So that'd be the main reason you buy these guys, is it so you don't have to worry about the ups and downs from them. Yes, you may not have the tremendous upside of other players, but you get the consistency and that later first buy. Similar to that with Jeremy Marshall-King and Blake Brayley. Jeremy probably has a little bit more attacking upside, which is fun, and you average in the mid-60s to begin the year last year. Being priced at that 56 just gives you a little bit of scope for improvement at the beginning. He did end up having a few injuries in that period through the middle of the year, and then finished off with a pretty rough one to end the year there. Blake Brayley at 5'19", his team is improving. He has AFB that he can hit with the short ball as well now, which I think is great for him at 5'19". It doesn't break the bank either, and you get him for a good period of time there, which we will quickly show you now. So for Dolphins, Sharks, Raiders, and Bunnies, for the Finns there, you're looking at round 13 first buy along with the Sharkies, so they get that first main buy. The Raiders get the round 15 as their first main buy, and then you are looking at the Bunnies there with a round 12 first buy, and then play every single one of the important major and minor buys up until that final minor buy in round 19. So a very, very interesting squad to have a look at a few players there for sure. So getting back to the hooking spot there, we've got Tom Starling, that if he was to start at 342k, he's definitely one that you can have some interest in. And then Pete Mamazelis at 302k, so a very, very cheap price for someone that we know when he gets minutes, he can score really well, as you could see in certain games last year, that he can be well into the 50s as an average if he gets that sort of 60 to 70 minutes, which was, it's way too cheap to miss out on someone like that. For the front row forwards, Adam Fanua-Blake is obviously the clear leader in this pack at 706k. Minutes-wise is probably the only question mark. I think he can score the same amount of tries and be one of the top tier guns again. And with a lovely late buy, no origin, is someone that you could stick and forget. Basically set and forget in that side. Similar to Joe Tarpany, he probably has less of a try scoring upside, but base stats is where his bread is buttered, that's for sure. And is another guy that could easily be a mainstay in your side with a round 15 first buy. Just leaves you that front row forward position with one guy that can stick solid there for the entirety of the first half of the season before their buys, and can make life a lot easier for you as a super coacher. Jai Arrow, the interesting one, to 497. If he happens to get an extended role on the edge, then great. We may see that at the beginning of the season with Jai Arrow, with Ewan Aiken to miss likely the beginning of the season with an injury there to his shoulder, I believe. So bit rough on his standpoint coming over, but Arrow could be an interesting guy to begin with, and then he seems to get moved around a bit. So it's a hard one to tick under 500k, but could pay off for a short-term thing, or if there are any injuries to the back rowers. Tommy Flegler at 462, just so sad to see how his season ended up last year after a cracking first 4 rounds, end up with a 59 average, and he's priced well down on that, closer to the 47, 48 mark. So if he happens to come back and play big minutes, that's going to be the if, so we'll wait on that one. Moving down the line, you've got a couple of those Sharks boys, but I think holding off on them because of the incredible AFB coming over. You do have David Wiley, who can have an increased role this season. Corey Horsburgh is going to be a fun one as well. At 355k with that 45 average, he's been priced well down off that average, which is lovely. Considering he should be at a 45, he should be all the way up here at the 440 mark with Josh Papali'i. So a 90k discount there, which is really lovely. Tavia Totola coming back into his running. He'll be a nice one, hopefully, that he can help the Bunnies when he does come back. Second row forwards. There are a few guns, which is nice, but you've got Hudson Young at 685. We know he's a buy at some point in the season. Last year he started slow and then went really well. Britton Nikora, similar thing. These second rowers, you buy them based off their pedigree, and if they do lose a bit of cash early, then you can jump onto those guys. Keon Kolomatangi at 619, along with Cam Murray. We should see Murray miss a couple of games to begin, most likely. And Keon Kolomatangi at 619 had a really nice season, but very up and down. So again, it could be risky to start with him, and depends where he starts in the pack. If he starts at 13, or if he gets opportunities to score tries on an edge. Teague Wilton I find very interesting. At 550k, he had a big improvement at the back end of the season and into finals, so keep an eye out on him. And you've got Hosking as well at 513, so there's plenty of guys on this list that could be in your side. And the good thing with this, as I said, is that you get them for a long time into the season without a buy. Lemuelu, I think, is slightly undervalued there at 483 after a pretty rough season. 18 games he played, but there was a few knee issues at the beginning of the year, and then you know it's hard to come back and play at your best after multiple injuries of the same area. Tom Gilbert at 462, so it just continues to come down the line, all these picks there in the second row forward position. And yeah, as I said, it's great to know that you can have a lot of these guys for a long period of time. Hopefully he comes back fit and firing after 2 injury-interrupted seasons for him. Dallas Duncan, where does he end up? Or is he just a bench guy this year? It's probably likely. And then we've got Corey Horsburgh, as we said, with the duel. Finafuriaki at a 37.6 average, includes a lot of games off the bench, some starting where he happened to score fairly well and at least be 10 points of value for us if he was to get big minutes on the edge for the Dolphins. And I do expect that going forward this year as a nice signing for them. Jacob Host, the GOAT. Matty Nicholson at 336. He comes over and is likely to be a bench guy if he does get a spot. If he happens to get a start, then sweet, will look. But until then, it's probably a no. And then guys like Josh Schuster, if he manages to get a spot, that could be helpful as well. So a very interesting second row forward position with teams that have a long runway of games in a row, which is awesome. For the halfback slot, it's pretty cheap. You've got Trindle, who can be solid, pretty expensive there at 553 for someone that has to share the role with Nico. Jamal Fogarty, it's his role. He's got the goal kicking as well. So that's helpful, and he started really well last year. So it could be a guy that you hold for the beginning, but upside is limited. Do you spend less at halfback so you can have upside in other positions? That's probably the only way you look at it. And then Isaiah Katoa at 390k. I think he has runway for an improved season as well. As a youngster, improving his own game, let alone his Supercoach scoring. But at 390k, you could pay to find out. And then Lewis Dodd at 336. If he gets the starting 7 jersey or Jamie Humphries, both those guys come into a lot of our thoughts, that's for sure. So that's the halfback position. Very, very fun, as well as a few options there. And then the 5/8 position with Cody Walker has the dual 57 average. If they happen to start playing much better footy than they did last year, then Walker could be a really interesting one for sure. We mentioned Trindle, and KO Weeks comes in likely to be the fullback. So that's an okay price, but fullback, you want a little bit more upside, I think, than KO Weeks. We've got Strange, we've got Atkinson, we've got White and Nikora, all guys that, apart from Atkinson, will have the role and will be okay. Not someone you want to target, I don't think, in that slot. For the center wings, you've got a few Sharks guns here. Ronaldo, KL Iro, you've got Jesse Ramey and Sione Katoa. All those guys could do really, really good jobs. KL Iro started to score tries in the back end, and that really improved his average into the 70s and 80s. And before that, he was obviously a little bit lower in the 50s, but made us plenty of cash. So it's hard to start with a few of these guys at the price they come in at. But if they start hot, the Sharkies, then they could be an awesome team to target in the center wing position. But you do have to mention Herbie, a 74.4 average, hit bulk, massive tons at the back end of the year. So 728k, he could be one of those guns that you start with in that position, which is on average, and with the sheer amount of players that average high, the highest averaging position with how much damage you can do with 4 starters and potentially reserves. Whereas fullback, this year is obviously different with the flex, but usually it's only you can get that 2 guys in there that can score really high. So Herbie's an interesting guy to look at. Asako, if Herbie's actually on the right, I think that helps him a little bit, to be fair. If Herbie does pass the ball, if they're just going right in general, there'll be cutout balls there. People worrying about Herbie on his side. So I think that's a really, really nice play if it does end up that way for Asako with Herbie on the right. Averillo, if he ends up on the left with Bostock, then it's probably the side that is less targeted. Kimmel Graham's going to be interesting at 505k. Does he make a spot on your side? It was great to hear him say that he's excited, that he feels like a footballer again, getting back into preseason. So happy for him. Tyrone Munro, does he come in at 397 and get a spot? Do we see Fletcher Myers on that left wing until AJ comes back at 322? He averaged 41. Had a sort of a runaway try, which you only get the 2 points for, obviously, in the intercept, I suppose, in Supercoach. And at 322, I think in a decent team, if Latrell's killing it, it could be a person you could find out and pay for. Similar to that with Isaiah Tass, 8 games, not his best start to the season. Not his best season at all last year for him. And moving to the fullbacks, Latrell Mitchell, hands down, close to the best option. If he gets anywhere near that form he had for that month or so before he got injured, he's an absolute jet. And goal kicking, big thing he's got over Tedesco is that goal kicking, obviously, there. And if the team plays well, they didn't play very well last year. If they actually play well, the sky's the limit for Latrell. I think Hammer has an extra window of improvement to get into the 70s at 653 if you want to go down that route. And then moving down from there, it's if Ison managed to get the spot, he's at 293 over Will Kennedy, then we'd have to look into him, and that would be a very tough decision with Iongi and Ison. But let's hope that Ison maybe gets a spot later down the track when we have an injury or something to one of our top guns. So that's the 4 teams to look at, guys. Really, really good to start with. You can decide what to do with them through the bye period and potentially at the end with their buys. But cracking team to start with. And we'll leave it at that, I think, with the Supercoach for those 4 videos. Next up, we're going to do a little bit of a team reveal. I just started putting a team together, so a bit of a structure. I'll give you some, I'm looking at this guy or this guy in that slot. We'll get that out, and then we'll go through all the positions in depth. I've got a rating system as to how good I think they're going to be as a pick for round 1. I've got their upside, their downside, and just some notes on the pros and cons for those guys. So that'll be awesome. Not covering every single player, but all the guys I think that you could have interest in, whether they're a gun, a value guy, or a cheapie. Thanks for coming in here. We'll see you in the next one.